who does the content manager, who, you talked about the different roles and interacting with different, like who do they interact with? How do they play with the other functions that we've been talking about in these videos?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I know we talk about this a lot, but I think it's important to delineate the difference between a function and a role. So a content manager is a function, and that role could be or that function could be performed by the team manager, right? On a smaller team, you have the team manager who also can act as the content manager, or it could be, the sales enablement manager, or it could be the director of sales, depending on, on your team size and how you choose to break down those functions. And I think it's important to think of it as a function because it might be one person doing all of these functions I'm about to describe, and it could be one person that's solely responsible for performing one of those functions as a full-time job, just really depending not only on the organization size, but also on the kind of on the depth of your strategy. We go into some enterprise organizations and like a global instance, they might have one sales enablement or sales engagement person that's responsible for being the content manager for like 20 teams. And then we also go into organizations that have the same functionality with a team of 20 instead of 20 individual teams. So as you try to expand your strategy, you're going to need more headcount. And I know we talk about that all the time, but it's something I think teams overlook because they don't realize how heavy of a lift this is. So just something to keep in mind as we talk about functions. It's distinct from role, and we talk about that on purpose.
Sales engagement, and then it's kind of like, all right, we need a technical admin to make sure we're overseeing this platform and all the technical stuff. But a lot of times the content stuff is either like, hey, marketing, we need your help to write content, which can be great. It could also be, throw things off as well because the marketing conversations are different than what a sales conversation is. And the biggest thing here is that your salespeople have to have confidence in the messaging. If they don't, they're not going to use it. And so that's really key. And I think which really plays into the other functions that a manager is going to interact with, and it has to be, content writers. So I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, and I think in a healthy content supply chain, you have input from marketing and you have input from sales. Marketing does a really good job of creating that one-to-many communication where you can have white papers, or you could have case studies, or you could have, statistics that are really useful to articulate your value proposition. And then sales writers are really important for taking that data and that information and making it really conversational. So it would sound, Theron, just like you and I are talking right now. One of the things, and this is a little off topic, but we're about to talk about content writers. And one of the things that I always tell people is read your email out loud. And if you wouldn't say that to somebody on a call or face-to-face, don't send that email.
Don't do it. Don't send it.
If you read a lot of marketing copy, it sounds, really, really great. It's very emotional, but it might not be exactly how you would talk. Not all the time, right? I don't want to generalize, but typically that's the difference that we see. And so the content writer in this case, going back to the functions that the content manager works with, the content writer is typically kind of housed within the sales organization. It could be, for example, in some teams, they might have someone on the marketing team who's a content writer that's going to do, to function as the sales content writer. But one thing that's always true in our recommendations is that this person function as a sales content writer in a different way than they function as a marketing content writer. And we have best practices for that.
Why is that?
Yeah, it's really to encourage adoption, right? When marketing is creating assets, they're typically not consulting sales reps to say, hey, is this going to help you build your pipeline? Marketing has their own KPIs, and they're making assets that are going to help with their KPIs. A sales content writer is primarily working with sales reps to scale what they're writing manually. And so what we find is sales reps typically write, let's say a follow-up email to an introduction conversation. Typically that email, it has personalization, obviously, right? It has notes from the call. It has, specific pain points that the prospect is experiencing. And so that sales rep is going to send a follow-up email that's maybe 20 to 30% distinct, but 70 to 80% of that follow-up email is going to be exactly the same as every other follow-up email for that purpose, right? And so the idea would be for the content writer to be a really good listener and understand how much of that process can be automated, but what's really, really important to be left manual. And that's a very specific function that sales uniquely needs, and specifically sales organizations who are utilizing a sales engagement platform to kind of hold their strategy together.